point, or is it I need to explain? Okay, very good. So that is what we are going to do so far. There are certain keywords that we need to take note. Yes, please. You may talk.
You can't see your screen. I can't see your screen.
You can't see my screen.
It might be from your end. It might be from your end. We can see.
It is visible.
Okay.
See.
So please, you may exit and come back if the link from your the network from your end is down. Sorry about that. So, what are some of the terminologies associated with the ecology? Population, the first term that comes to mind, population. And when we talk about population, that is where people get confused. Like the moment you see organisms moving around, then you call it a population. No. A population must be a group of organisms, but the organisms must be of the same species, and that they are inhabiting in a place and they are able to interbreed. So when we say population, we can say population of goats. Then they are all goats. Goats can mate, females get pregnant, and they give birth. That is capable of interbreeding. And that the young ones that they give birth to must also be viable and capable of breeding. If you have mosquitoes, then you must have a population of mosquitoes, so that the males and females can mate, the females can lay eggs, they can hatch to become a new mosquitoes. So that is what we call population. So you don't necessarily have to miss a farmer and his or her goats. Then they constitute one population. Then put the farmer and his or her family into one population category, and put the goats into one population category, because a farmer cannot impregnate his goat for the goat to give birth to another goat or another human being. So with this understanding, then we can say, what is the definition of species? Species are organisms that should have the same morphology. Like when they are there and you see this organism, you can say that this organism is a sheep, this organism is a goat. That is the morphology. And that they have the same physiology and they have the same genetic characteristics, such that even if we want to take their DNA and compare, we can say that, oh, this is the DNA of a goat, this is the DNA of a mosquito, this is the DNA of a housefly or cockroach or human being. And that constitutes a species. So therefore, a mosquito and a mosquito can breed. A human and a human can breed, but a human and a donkey are not in the same species. And therefore, they don't constitute the same population. What is a community? Now, this is where we can put goats and man and mosquitoes and others together. So, community is explained as a group of different populations living in an area due to their combined action of various environmental factors, whatever they need, and that they share a bond. So humans have dogs, and we call the dogs pets. So we and the dogs, we form one community. We live in a community where there are herdsmen. They bring their cats to graze on a particular field. They bring their cats to drink water from a particular field. So we can look at population of cattle, population of humans, population of goats, population of dogs, and so long as we live in the same environment, we can form a community. And therefore, when we narrow down the definition to the environment, as I have explained, the environment includes everything, I mean, let's say the totality of everything within a particular space constitutes environment. And therefore, the buildings that we have put up form part of the environment, the mountains, the rivers, the trees, everything forms part of the environment. So environment includes the living things and the non-living things. We say they include both physical, which are the non-living things, and the biological, which are the living things. They constitute the environment. So that is the explanation I can give on this. Now, the types of ecology. let me tell you, I said ecology is already a study. So if I go back to that slide, you understand ecology is a field of study of relationship between organisms and their environment. So organisms in environment can be studied in different ways. We can just be interested in, say, a population of grasshoppers, and we will use it to make a generalization about a community. So let's say, for example, there's a volcanic eruption, and trees, animals in a particular locality, they die from the volcanic ashes and the lava that covers the landmass. And after some time, we see that some ants are there, some seeds have germinated, and there's a lot of grasshopper in the community or on that land that was once covered by lava from volcanic eruption. Now, if you really want to study the environmental conditions that causes organisms to survive, we would focus on the dominant organisms in the community. And we see that, oh, there are a lot of grasshoppers there. So our focus will be on grasshopper. So whenever an ecologist pay attention to one species, a single species population, and how the environment is selecting them to survive, or how they are disturbing the environment, then we call that kind of study ecology. So if somebody travels to, say, Bogatanga, in Bogatanga we have maybe cucumbers, dagombers, nanumbers, sisales, and the person says, oh, the Bogatanga is a typical dagomba land, just an example, a typical dagomba land. So we want to study about the culture of dagombas, how they have survived over the years, how they have passed the generation, culture to the various generations. Then in that case, that kind of ecological study is ecology, because it is about a single population and their relationship with the environment. So when they are able to study about this single population, whatever responses that they get from the study, they will say that then that response applies to all organisms. All organisms. So even if I am an Ashanti man and I have lived in Bogatanga for 50 years, and they come to take a study that they even ask a question, a child who is 5 years questions, the responses that the child gives, they use it to cover me, who is not a Boga man, I mean a Dagomba man, but I've lived in Boga for a long time, or Tamale for a long time. That is what they do. So they use this result from a single population and extrapolate it for the entire community. And this may not really fit well. This may not fit well and may give a result in wrong decision making. And we know this is also happening in Ghana or elsewhere, that some people will just get a few people, ask them questions, and then they write reports and service for everyone. Yeah. Which people? Oh, senior, I'm not in Cape Coast. Why? Okay, bye-bye. Please, are you there? Am I audible? Somebody made a call came through. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I was trying to say that ecology means we just make a decision about a small group of people or one group of people, and we use it to cover everybody. And that may provide some good responses to the one who is doing the research. But if the response, they don't conduct another group of study or another study to see if there has been any change, and they stick to that response, then they continue to make errors in the environment, some poor decision making that brings about a lot of problems in the in the environment. So we say that the resources are separated to the entire community many a times do not fit needs of the community. Do not fit needs of the community because the study does not consider other communities. And the reason why it doesn't fit is that the community is made up of different populations, and we have different conditions to survive. There are some people that when they come to our environment, the mosquitoes bite them, they suffer from malaria, and they die. So if there are some people in the community that are resistant to malaria or mosquito bites, and that they are not dying, then you say that, okay, those people who live here, the mosquitoes bite them, they don't fall sick. So we don't need to put up a clinic there to take care of their health needs, because this community, the rest of the communities, their basic need is malaria. So we are going to build clinic in their community, which is really wrong. So ecologists know this, that there may be a time that we have to undertake horticulture, but over time we have to change the study, the results to meet other people who might have, or other organisms that might have traveled to that community. The next type of study of ecology is called synecology. So synecology is the opposite of the horticulture. For synecology, different communities are even studied, so that if we are in Ghana, and we are in Central region, we can conduct a study in Elmina, where different populations are there. We take study from them. Then we can go to maybe Picos or Yamransa or somewhere. Then we take study from them. Then we can see that, oh, the study the results are similar here and there. The results are different here and there. What decision should we take to help them? So if there are farmers and there's invasion of their farm by locust or armyworm, then we will know that these communities need help, that community need help. And what we did in this community to help solve the problem must work for the other community. So we are going to apply it there. That's basically what the synecology is. So say, given the complexity of the community setup, says different populations interacting with each other, and then population species interacting with their various environment within the community. So that's why, because we know that different organisms are interacting, different species are interacting, that outcome gives the reality of the situation on the ground. So say, but in reality, it should be the ideal state in which ecological studies should be done. So the synecology should be the ideal stage, ideal stage which is needed for the conduct of studies. So, for example, let's look at a typical example. If we are doing the Brilliant Science and Maths quiz or the National Science and Maths quiz, what do? We say that, oh, this school did well in the previous contest, so we are seeding the school. Then we keep the school waiting now until semi-finals or quarterfinals before we bring them. So we are more or less saying that, oh, these are the people that they are the face of the contest, and therefore we must keep them until the end of the contest. Then we bring them in, because if we bring them in early enough and they are kicked out, then the beauty of the contest goes down. So in any case, because some people have particular interest in one school, thinking that this is the school that is the phase of it, and this is the school that is going to bring money to the contest, this is the school. Their own decision, their own study has been based on school, say Achimote School or Presec Legon or Prempeh Kali. But if there's somebody does a study where the person will say, oh, Keta School, in the past 8 years, Keta School was not doing well, but now Keta School has risen to that point. In the past 3 years, Yasantua was doing well, but Yasantua has declined in this stage. When you study different schools and you are making decisions to see if you want the beauty and the complexity of the context to be, you can make decision to cover everything, then it is an ecology. But if you use only Prempe or Okuguware to make a decision, then it is ecology. Is it clear to us, or if there's any comment, any kind of? Okay, so we can proceed, and we need to understand that when we talk about ecology, it's not just a single field. Ecology is a broad term for studies from different fields. So we can have knowledge from biochemistry, we can have knowledge from evolutionary studies, we can have knowledge from meteorology, petroleum, general biology, physics. We can have knowledge from them all. So we are saying that the term applies to different fields of specialization in science. And therefore, organisms inhabit in different places. When you come to Kwau, people are living on mountains. But then when we come to a different place, people are living in the beach or at the beach where it's a plain land. So you see that the nature of the land, the composition of the soil, the type of water in these environments are different. So if we really want to study the type of water, we will do the chemistry or the biochemistry of the water. Then we see that there are differences in salt concentration, there are differences in mineral components. That is why when you are looking at water, somebody may look at water from the perspective of agriculture, that it is used for irrigation, it is used for serving animals, whilst the medical doctor will be looking at water from the perspective that is the water contaminated, are there waterborne diseases in a particular environment like bilharziasis, schistosomiasis. So you see how different disciplines can look at water and they achieve their results. So eventually we are saying that the study of ecology or ecological studies are multidisciplinary, and therefore the changes in ecology will determine climatic conditions. So in Ghana, for instance, those of us at the coast, like Cape Coast, we are at the coast. The sun shines a lot. But those in the forest zones, the sun also shines. But you realize that when you're in the forest zones, when the sun shines too much, and even you sweat, the sweat doesn't evaporate, and the sweat becomes sticky on your skin. While those in a dry environment, when you sweat, the sweat evaporates, and the skin even becomes quite dry. So the climatic change within a particular locality is also of interest to the meteorologists or whoever is interested in weather and stuff. And that makes the study of ecology multidisciplinary. So for example, if we buy a lot of fuel, for example, let's use Nigeria, that people say in Nigeria, almost every household has a generator or a plant. So if in the evening, for instance, there's lights out and every home puts on a generator, you can imagine the amount of fuel that this huge Nigeria country will burn, including, apart from household fuel that they burn, the industries will burn, their vehicles burn fuel. So these vehicles and the fuel that they are emitting, household gases that they are emitting, will basically influence climate change. Climate change. If climate change happens in a negative sense and the rainfall pattern is also disturbed, then food production is likely to be hampered such that farmers will not even know when to start cultivating, because the time that they believe that they should be weeding and they'll be clearing their land, that is when the rainfall will stop. And in December, January, that they expect that the weather will be dry. That is when the rainfall begins to set in. So all these factors are really important, and they are considered in ecology as a multidisciplinary field. So we say that increased production of change issues can be studied in climatology, agriculture, fisheries, renewable energy studies, architecture, automobile industries, and petroleum industries. So that is for your information on the multidisciplinary nature of ecology. So let's look at space research. Space research is also part of ecology. Well, since I was a young boy that I heard that Americans have sent monkeys to space, to the planet Mars, to see if monkeys can survive on planet Mars. Since I was a young boy that I heard that they have sent sheep and goats to, or they send sheep and goats to planet Mars to see if life can survive there. Some few years ago, we heard that NATO or NASA sent a robot the robot that they call Curiosity to the planet Mars to explore planet Mars to see if there have been life form, like organisms once lived there, or whether there's water, whether there's rainfall on planet Mars, and that it can be able to support human life there. So that's all sort of study. So that in the future, if they fight like now, the Americans and Europe and Israel, they are fighting Iran. If they destroy the planet Earth, then they will fly and go and stay on planet Mars. And those of us who cannot go, we stay on Earth and we die. Then they survive. So here, this diagram shows the multidisciplinary nature of ecology. Look at ecology at the center, and look at all the behavioral science, evolutionary, meteorology, physics, chemistry, petroleum, geology, biogeography, and the rest. So these are points indicating the biodisciplinary nature of the ecology. But now, the term principles of ecology. What are the ecological principles, basically? And what do they mean to us? If we talk about principles of ecology or ecological principles, what are they and what do they mean to us? The principles indicate that there's interdependency in any environment. So me, as a human being, I eat. So I eat meat, I'll eat plants, and eventually, if I die, I'll go to the soil, and the plants will also use my body as manure for their growth. That is how it is. In the environment, mosquitoes bite me, and I kill mosquitoes because they will bite me, and I can die. So there's also interaction. So nobody is actually existing in isolation. And that is one of the principles that we need to understand, so that whenever we are doing anything, in life, we think about other people, that we are not only benefiting, but whatever we are doing should also benefit other organisms, not only humans, but other organisms. Materials recycle is a principle. Materials recycle. Yes, for example, if you have a farm, you cut weeds down, the weeds become manure into the soil. Other plants will grow on it. When they produce food, you also cut it down and it goes back to the soil. So always materials are recycling. And as a result, there's energy flow. There's energy flow in the ecosystem. And it is also known that resources do not go increasing forever. So if, for example, you are in a community where there's galamsey, and the people will be digging the galamsey pit, grabbing for gold. In the process, they are destroying arable farmlands, they are destroying cocoa lands. And initially, when galamsey people come, because they are getting money, the farmers bring food for them to buy at expensive price. And the farmers are happy because they say there's money, business is booming. But over time, when they are destroying the farmlands, then the food becomes scarce. And the farmers who once sold their products at expensive prices, now they don't have the land to what? To cultivate again. So eventually the food available will not be enough for the people in the community. Some will die, some will fight and kill each other, or some will migrate from that location to the other. And there are history of places where in the past there were coal mines, and after they stopped the coal mines, the people, they lost their job, and some of them left, and the place became very difficult to live because there's no food, there's no water, and there's no job. Because the people might have depleted the resources and they are gone. So resources are limited in the course of time. Let me give you a typical example. In the university, in the past, when it was A-level, O-level students who could go to the university, once you get admission into the university and you are in the university hall, you will stay in the hall throughout the 4 years or 3 years of study. Now, there was sufficient space for everyone. SSS come in, and people who are 15 years, 14 years, they enter into the university. And therefore, the years that it will take individuals to enter into the university has become less or can become shorter. So many children are in that category, and therefore they are all getting into the university. So it got to a time the university said, now the accommodation policy on campus is that you come first year, you get accommodation. Second year, you go out. Third year, you go out. Then fourth year, you come back. Because you're in your final year, you need to get a good place to stay and learn and pass. But then, it got to a time the university said, oh no, even when you come to the university, you can only stay for first year. Because now the university is not building new rooms, new halls, and number of students have increased. So the space has become very limited. So limited growth, limited facilities are there. So now first year, it's only first year students who get accommodation. And even as of last year, there are some people who are admitted into first year and they don't have accommodation because the number of students admitted have exceeded the space available. So that is how it is happening. The more the resources available brings about increase of population or increase in the population, you get to a time that the resources become limited because the number of people in the environment have grown. So the essence of this principle is that everything is connected to everything else. That is what we need to understand. And that everything must go somewhere else. And that there is no such thing as free lunch. When you take from the environment will also take from you. So there's nothing like free lunch. And therefore, nature knows the best, or nature knows best how things are handled. So we will live and we will complain about many things and we will die and new ones will come and they also complain and they'll contribute nothing or they'll contribute something and they also die and they'll go. And that is how the principles of ecology are applicable. Any question, any comments? Any question, any comment? Am I audible? If you are around, show thumbs up. Okay. Very good. So we go to the next slide. Now, having understood the principles and having known that the environment interacts with the organisms in it, therefore the environment includes both the living and the non-living things, we will go to the factors that influence the environment. What we need to understand that the environment could be aquatic, the environment could be terrestrial. Now, there are certain factors that are found in both the aquatic environment and the terrestrial environment. And there are certain factors that are applicable to the aquatic environment only, and there are certain factors that are applicable largely to the terrestrial environment. So here we look at the factors that influence or applicable or common to both the aquatic and the terrestrial habitats. Rainfall, temperature, light, pH, wind, pressure. These factors affect both aquatic and terrestrial environment, and it also affects the flora, the plant species, and the fauna, the animal species in these two environments or these two habitats, the aquatic and terrestrial habitats. Now, those factors that are common to the aquatic environment only are transparency and turbidity. We will talk about this soon. Salinity, dissolved gases, current, tides and waves, depth and profile. Okay, anybody trying to talk? Somebody trying to talk? Okay, so let's continue. Now, which factors are we talking about now? The rainfall. The rainfall is common to both terrestrial and aquatic environment. And rainfall is a major climatic factor in the tropics. When we talk about tropics, we are talking about tropical zones like where there's a lot of sunshine and there's a lot of rainfall, and more or less there's only two seasons: dry season and wet season. That is the environment that we call the tropical zone. Pugli Bright, please. Okay, thank you. Any other person whose child or whose microphone is on, try and mute yourself for me. Okay, so as I said, when we talk about the tropical zones, we talk about places where basically we have only two weather conditions, like dry season and wet season. And then we have the temperate zones where we have 4 seasons, like spring, summer, autumn, winter. Yes. Basically, in the tropical zones, rainfall has a lot of influence because it influences the distribution of plants and animals in this region. If you go to a savanna region where there's minimal rainfall, you see grasses a lot, and you see some trees that are short and they are scattered. They don't cluster. But when you go to the rainforest, you see trees that are tall, forming a continuous canopy. And when you are even on top, when you're under the trees, you don't see the sky. Somebody's microphone is on. Who is that person? Messi Owusu. Is it Messi Owusu? Messi Owusu, can you mute yourself for us? Okay, thank you. So as I was saying, if you go to the tropical rainforest, when you stand under the vegetation, you won't see the sky. The kind of vegetation there is different from a savanna region where you see trees scattered. The trees don't grow tall, and you can see everywhere, whether you are standing under the tree or you are sitting on top of the tree. Because the rainfall pattern is different in these two localities in the tropical zone. So that is on land, but even in the aquatic environment, when it rains too, we know the differences in organisms. Okay, some organisms are not visible when there's too much water in a river or a pond, and while some organisms become visible when there's too little or the water level has gone down. And even if you go to some places where there's fresh water and then marine water meet, where we call the estuary or the brackish region, you see that different organisms are there. Organisms that are able to cope with both fresh water and seawater. they dwell there. And those that do not cope with the seawater, they will leave. Those that do not cope with the fresh water, they will leave. Yes, so you see that the rainfall pattern determines which organisms stay where. Because if it rains too much and the rivers get flooded, rivers will flow into the ocean. And when the river level goes down due to minimal rainfall, the ocean will also flow into the river. And at each instance, different organisms can be found there. Some organisms too, their reproductive behavior is tied to rainfall. So frogs like this, when it rains, that is when the male will be calling the female. Come, and when they come, the females come, the males mount them, and they lay eggs. And within some days, the eggs turn to tadpole, and they grow. In the same way, if you pick termites, when it rains, that is when their nuptial flight begins. They will fly and they will go and form their new colony. Sometimes they come under the light, street light, or they will come into your home if there's a light on, and they'll flood the entire environment. So that is how rainfall is tied to the reproductive behavior of some of these organisms. The instrument for measuring rainfall is rain gauge. So that is partly how rainfall influences the aquatic and the terrestrial environment. We are taking this small. We are not going too much details, but we will learn more in the subsequent lectures. Now we go to temperature, which is also a common factor influencing both aquatic and terrestrial habitats. Okay, so temperature is a very climatic factor in the temperate regions, and in the temperate regions we have summer. The sun shines, temperature can go as high as 37 degrees Celsius to 40 degrees Celsius. And even when the temperature reaches 28 degrees Celsius and you are walking on the sun, it's like somebody has poured coal fire on you, because the sun intensity burns the skin. You feel the burning heat of the skin. But when it comes to winter, you can walk a whole week. You will not see sunlight. You see that the sky is open, but there's no real sunlight. So you see that temperature in winter is different, because temperature in winter is about -20, -30, depending on the locality. Sometimes 0 degrees, sometimes 2, sometimes -1 degree. So temperature is variable. And the behavior of organisms during summer, winter, spring, autumn is quite variable. Even if you are in winter condition and you meet some people on the street, you greet them, they will not greet you, they will not respond, they will not look into your face, let alone shake hands with you. Like we the Ghanaians, everywhere you go, you want to shake hands with people. When you are in winter, you don't do that. The people will say you are crazy, you are mad. Yeah, but when it is spring, what happens? Temperature is different. Birds will mate, birds will lay eggs, and birds they sit, brood, and hatch the eggs. So you see how temperature is influencing behavior of organisms. There are some birds that during winter they will travel across the Atlantic Ocean from Europe to Africa. They can come to Ghana, they can go to Mali, they can go to Morocco, they can go to Tunisia, and they will stay there until the winter is over. Then they know that at this time winter is over, and they will fly back because they are following the temperature conditions. So that is how. So we say that temperature differences are responsible for different fauna and flora. Plants and animals present various varieties, strains in temperate and tropic zones. Let me give one example. In UCC, there's a particular tree. It's not even a big tree, like a shrub. Throughout the year, it can flower more than once. But there's a time that when it flowers, the petal color is pink. At some time, the petal color is white. And at some time, the flowers, different flowers on the plant will have, some will have white, some will have pink, and some will have different shades of pink and white. So you see that this is dependent on the temperature conditions as to which petal color should be exhibited by the plant. Another example, organisms like crocodile, you may use the internet to search. But what I know is that when a crocodile lays egg and the egg hatches, whether the hatchling will be a male or a female depends on the temperature that brooded or that was available during the brooding stage. How do you call it? Brooding, sitting on the reptile's egg. Even temperature difference is determining the sex of the crocodile. So that is how temperature influences the ecological setting. Please, any question? Do you understand?
Please, we are talking about
Yes.
the aquatic and the terrestrial. Please, with the habitat, we also have the arboreal habitats.
Yeah, so the arboreal is part of the terrestrial. Arboreal is the trees, those organisms in the trees, they are present in the tree canopies. That's arboreal, but it's on land. So that's why I just made the two general classifications.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Okay, so Gideon Kumi. Gideon, are you ready? Okay, let me call Bright.
Okay, Doctor, thank you very much for your presentation. I just want to ask, so these factors that affect the ecology, we are talking.
Bright, your voice is gone. Right, your voice is gone. Can you reposition yourself for me? Oh, too bad. I'm losing Bright. Any other person? So, Bright, when your internet is restored, you can talk again. Now your internet is gone. Sorry about that. When you restore, you can raise your hand or you can prompt me. I will make you talk. If you can hear me now. So the description that I gave is on the aquatic terrestrial environment. In the aquatic environment, how does temperature influence the ecological conditions? Temperature brings about something we call thermal stratification. What does it mean? When the sun shines and the weather is hot, you see that the surface of the water heats up. So the temperature there becomes high to a certain depth. Then below that level, the temperature is not as high as the level above. And then below the middle layer, the sun does not reach there. The sun energy does not reach there. So there's no light there. So because of temperature, there's something called thermal stratification. Thermal stratification. Epilumnium is the topmost, where the sun energy penetrates. The thermocline is a boundary zone where minimal light energy penetrates. And we have the hypolimnium, the inner layer, or the bottommost layer of the water body that the sun does not penetrate at all. So organisms that don't love light, that do not love too much temperature, if they are in the hypolimnium, they will not cross the thermocline zone into the epilumnium. They will just be confined to there. And there are organisms too that love a combination of the two temperatures. So they will stay in the thermocline zone. And there are some that want to use the heat in the upper part, so they will stay in the equilibrium zone. That's what it is. But you know, this thermal stratification is not always permanent, that it is there throughout the day. It can, even in the course of the day, the thermal stratification can be overturned. If the rain falls, too much water comes into the water, maybe some running water like rivers and other catchment areas come in. If there's too much wind, if there's too much air current, it can overturn the thermal stratification. Yeah. So thermal stratification can be overturned, and this is what we call the upwelling. So upwelling, sometimes even the bottom, a big animal is running through the water, and the dirt at the bottom of the water will come up, just causing a disturbance, and the thermal stratification is no more there. But what we need to understand that thermal stratification does happen in the water bodies due to the temperature in the environment. And we are saying that upwelling is a very important phenomenon which occurs during the rainy season, as I said, okay? And also, it leads to changes in the physiochemical condition of water. Temperature in the various layers will change. Chemicals at the bottom of the water will be mixing up with the surface and the middle layer. So for instance, lowering water temperature increases, for example, lowering water temperature, another example, increase in nutrients content of water and decrease in oxygen content of water may all be as a result of this upwelling. Yeah. The temperature of water or temperature in the environment in the air is measured by the device called thermometer. Now, then other factor that is common to light water environment and the plant aquatic environment, the terrestrial environment or habitat is light. And we all know light is important for vision. We need light to see. And if there are plants also need the light for their normal physiology, photosynthetic activities. So in the aquatic environment, for example, organisms that live in the hypolimnium, light does not reach there. So they don't have good vision. However, they must have a mechanism of producing their own light. So we call those organisms bioluminescent animals when they are in the aquatic environment and they are living at the bottom where light does not penetrate. If the organisms are on land and they need to produce their own light, we have the fireflies. You all know the fireflies. Fireflies are also bioluminescent. They are able to produce their own light. So that is really part of the physiology of organisms in the aquatic environment and also on land. So we have what we call a diurnal migration of organisms. There are organisms that when there's light, they will migrate from the bottom of the water body and they come to the surface and they will come and feed there because they can see clearly there and they can feed on any prey that is moving. But when light intensity goes down, then they move to the bottom of the water. So that is what we call the vertical migration of these fishes in their environment. Let me call Ebenezer Aheto. Ebenezer Aheto, you can mute yourself for me, please, if you can hear me. Thank you. So what we are saying that light influences many things as to whether an organism should produce its own light or not, as to whether plants will be able to photosynthesize or not, as to whether organisms will be able to move around or not. There are organisms like the cats, like the rats. At night, they are very active. They hunt at night because a portion of their eye does not produce light, but it's able to reflect the faint light in the darkness. So when you see their eyes, you think that their eyes are producing light. No, their eyes have the reflective tissue that's able to reflect light. so that if it reflects light, any organism that is in its vicinity, the cat can see it, the cat can chase after it. And that is how light also influences nocturnal behavior of some organism. Okay, you see, there are tiny, tiny organisms in water. We call them zooplanktons. Sometimes the zooplanktons, you cannot even see them with your naked eye. You have to see them under microscope. These zooplankton are animal in nature. They move. And there are other organisms that do not, they are not animals. They are called phytoplanktons. And they photosynthesize. So the zooplanktons need to feed on the phytoplanktons for their survival. And even the bigger fishes come to also feed on both zooplanktons and phytoplanktons. And therefore, we need light to boost the population of the zooplankton and the phytoplankton in the aquatic environment. So as I indicated earlier on, with the depth of penetration of light, we can have a zone where light can penetrate. We will call it aphotic or photic zone. And we can have a depth beyond which light cannot penetrate. And that is called the aphotic zone. So some organisms that are in the photic zone, because they are able to get sun energy, they are photosynthetic. So the photic zone is the photosynthetic zone where plants manufacture their food and eventually release oxygen to the environment. Because about 70% of oxygen on land come from the sea, come from the water bodies. And only 30% of oxygen on land come from the trees. So the zooplanktons and other plant life in the water, they utilize the sun's energy and they produce oxygen that we all benefit. But the aphotic zone or the dysphotic zone, no light penetrates there. So there are some fishes that they have some antenna on their head, and this antenna gives off light. They have chemical reaction in their body that produce light at the tip of the antenna. So any organism in the
hello, sir.
Yes, please.
Hello, sir.
Yes, I'm listening.
Please, a small question here. The zooplanktons, are they animal-like structure organisms or plant-like? The zooplankton. I know phytoplankton to be pure of plants, but the zooplankton.
Okay, so basically the difference is that one is photosynthetic, one is not photosynthetic. The one that is not photosynthetic must feed on the photosynthetic one. Animals feed on photosynthetic organisms. So the zooplanktons are animal-like and the phyto are plant-like.
The reason I'm asking this question is when you mentioned that they produce oxygen. That's the reason why I'm asking that.
I said
you know that animals. Okay,
the
thank you for the correction.
phyto are the planktons. So at that point, I just mentioned planktons in general, but the photosynthetic ones are the ones that contribute to the oxygen load in the atmosphere and in the water. Thanks for drawing my attention. So what I was saying is that the organisms in the dysphotic or the aphotic zone, some of them, they have an antenna on their head, like the whiskers on the mouth of catfish. And these, at the tip of it, some light, and the light is emitted. And when other organisms that do not emit this light see the light in that dark zone, they become marbled. They say, oh, what is this? Let's get closer to observe. And as they get closer to observe, the animal that is emitting the light will pounce on them and feed on them. So they are using this light as a tool for hunting, And that is an advantage that light is conferring to organisms, some of them in the dark dysphotic zone. Okay, when it comes to land, light contributes to what we call photoperiodicity. Photoperiodicity means that light intensity in the day is not the same at all times. That in the temperate zones where we have 4 seasons, light is mostly available in summer and portion of autumn and portion of spring. But summer is mostly sunny. Even in summer, even 11 p.m., light may still be on. Light may still be on as if it is 10 a.m. in Ghana. So the Europeans, and I don't know whether it's the same in America, but what I know in Europe is that during summer, they create artificial time. They create additional 1 hour. So if at this time, the difference between Ghana and Germany time is 1 hour, when they get to summer, the Germans create, or the Europeans create additional 1 hour so that the difference become 2 hours. So that if it is 10 a.m. in Ghana, it is 12 p.m. in Germany. But if it is not in summer and it is 10 a.m. in Ghana, it will be 11 p.m. in Germany. So because they create an artificial time so that they can stay out for a long time, they can bring a lot of beer and wine and whiskey and stuff. So that is how they boost their economy and allow people to stay for a long time. Yes. But in Ghana, other tropical zones, we will have 12 hours daylight, 12 hours darkness. So say 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., 12 hours. Then from 6 p.m., it is expected that the sun will set. So another 6 a.m. That is the assumption. But sometimes, if the weather is cloudy, by 4 p.m. the sun is gone, or by 5 p.m. the sun is gone. But these figures are average figures. However, as I said, the behavior of organisms in Ghana when it comes to photoperiodicity is quite different from that of organisms in the tropical zones and the temperate zone. Okay. Light intensity is measured by photometer. Okay. And in the aquatic habitat, they use hydrophotometer to measure light intensity. That means how deep can the light penetrate into the water. pH.
So, Doctor.
Yes. Yes, please.
With regards to the instrument for measuring light intensity, can we also say light meter? Because I've seen it in other
books.
Yeah, light meter.
Light meter. Well, as it is, I wouldn't say that is wrong, because probably the individuals that will manufacture the device can give it a name. Even if it comes to medications, paracetamol, people call it PMO, people call it UMO, it depends on the manufacturer. So that is not entirely or necessarily wrong. You are right. Yes. But what I know and I've seen in books or in the literature are basically the photometer or the hydrophotometer for the water. So James, that is it. Thank you for adding to it. pH. Whenever we talk about pH, then we are talking about the level of acidity or alkalinity of the medium. The level of acidity or alkalinity of the medium. So water can be alkaline, water can be acidic, depending on the kind of biological activities in the water. In the same way, soil can also be acidic, soil can be alkaline, depending on the biological activities. Or soil can be neutral, water can also be neutral as such. Okay. So some organisms in water, they love to be in a neutral environment. Some organisms want to live in acidic environment, while some organisms want to live in alkaline environment. The knowledge is that these conditions determine or influence the distribution of organisms. So because when you're talking about ecology, we are talking about how organisms interact with the environment. So some organisms don't dwell well in acidic environment, therefore you will not find them. Okay, and whilst some dwell well in the alkaline environment, you'll find them there. So that is the difference in pH. We know from GSS that pH ranges from 1 to 14. 1 being the most acidic. Toward the 7, the acidity decreases, and 7 is neutral. And after 7, we enter into alkalinity, and the alkalinity increase until it gets to 14. The surface of water usually has a pH of 8 to 8.5, which means it's basically alkaline. And some organisms that are adapted to this will be on the surface of the water. Those that are not adapted to it, they will go to a different place. The device for measuring pH is pH meter. The device for measuring pH is pH meter. Wind. Wind is also another factor. We know that the wind strength determines the kind of plants that are found in a particular locality. If the plant is deeply rooted to the ground, it will always be in a position to face the wind. But plants that are not deeply rooted in the ground, they will not be there because the wind will push them down, and they will fall off. So that is how it works. Okay, so we are saying that, a minute, please. So we are saying that the wind affects both the aquatic and then the terrestrial environment. In the terrestrial environment, I have already mentioned that wind determines the distribution of plants. Some of the plants, they don't cope well with the wind, so they fall. So if you go to the beach, I live in Cape Coast, so let me use the beach as an example. If you go to the beach, what kind of plants will you find there? The tall growing plants are the coconuts, and the short ones are just grasses and some shrubs there. Because coconuts, the leaves are like, they are not together. So when the wind blows, it just moves in between the leaves. And they have root system that allow them to hold firmly in the ground so that they are not broken. Even the stem is also fibrous, not woody. The stem is also fibrous, not woody. So these allow coconut to withstand pressure, and they can survive at the beach. So that is it. When it comes to water, the wind is important because the wind will help in creating currents, water currents, that will determine the waves also on the surface of water, like the ocean. And as the wind blows, creating current, the wind helps in mixing air and introducing oxygen into the water, or bringing oxygen from the water to the terrestrial environment. So the wind is really important. Wind can even help break thermal stratification. I have mentioned thermal stratification, the differences in the heat content of water as we move from the surface to the bottom. So we have epilemium, topmost warm, thermocline, middle, and hypocline, lower, dark, dysphotic zone. The other factor is pressure. Pressure is a key factor. Pressure is a key factor. So when you talk about pressure, it's basically how heavy one feels when one is in the water, or when one is climbing above or climbing top of a mountain. Those of us who have gone into the pool or have gone swimming in the pool before, you will know that when you are in the pool and you begin to squat into the pool and the water reaches the chest, you feel some kind of heaviness in the chest. That means that the water is exerting pressure on your chest. So in water, for example, pressure increases with depth. As you move down, as you move deep into the water, the volume of water increases, and pressure that the water exerts on the body is high. But when you are on land, the pressure begins to, change as you climb up. So the higher you climb, the less pressure you feel. Okay, so atmospheric pressure reduces with increasing altitude from lowland to highland as well. Now, this factor called transparency and turbidity is a typical aquatic environment factor. Transparency, we are talking about how clear the water is. If you look into the water, will you be able to see the bottom? Let's say it is a stream or a river. Would you be able to see the bottom? That is transparency. And turbidity, want to know how dirty the water is. Tampuri, you raise your hand.
Yes, dog.
Yes,
what is the instrument used to measure atmospheric pressure? Hello.
Barometer.
Yes.
So somebody is helping us to answer.
That is.
It's barometer.
Barometer.
Oh, okay. It is not on the slide. That's why I didn't see it, and I'm calling.
Forgive me for missing out. So forgive me, okay? Okay, thank you for your understanding. So I believe we all understand how these factors are influencing our environment. Are you talking to me or you are talking to somebody else? Okay, so first, as I was saying,
Tampori, yeah, no, the questions ever. Well, my questions number. Yeah, oh, dear.
But what about if a question comes you go to the classroom and the child asks you the instrument used to measure atmospheric pressure? So it's better we know it before you are ready for
Anyway, let's continue. I don't even know what I will ask, but let's continue. Okay.
Bad boys.
Okay, so transparency talks about how clear the water is, and turbidity talks about how dirty or how unclear or unclean the water is. So whenever transparency is high, turbidity is low. And whenever turbidity is high, transparency is low. And you know, many factors can influence turbidity and transparency in the aquatic environment. For example, when it rains, running water goes into the water body. It carries all kind of debris, pollutants, waste, domestic waste, fecal matter from farms, all run into water bodies, and you see that the water is murky and the water is turbid, and you can see. But after some time, all these particulate matters may settle at the bottom of the water, or the water will carry them away to a different location, and the water begins to be clear. But the truth is that the amount of planktons, zooplanktons, phytoplanktons in water bodies is determined by the amount of dissolved particulate matter. Like if poultry dropping from cattle, sheep, ran, or even human excrement is sent into a water body, the organic matter in the water body will increase. That will cause zooplankton to flourish. That will also cause phytoplanktons to flourish. These phytoplanktons and zooplanktons, they will be using the oxygen. So phytoplanktons will produce oxygen. Zooplanktons will be consuming the oxygen. A time will come that the zooplanktons will over-multiply, so that they will consume all the oxygen, because they will outnumber the fishes and other organisms in it. And the organisms in the water may not even be getting oxygen to breathe. And that is why we always discourage people depositing or dumping fecal matter into water bodies, because it causes depletion of life in the environment. Water and organisms die, fishes and plants may die. Yes. So the transparency is measured by the Secchi disk, and turbidity is measured by the turbidimeter. These are the instruments we use to measure. Salinity. Salinity talks about the amount of salt in the water body. And therefore, the unit for measuring salt is gram of salt per liter of water. That means if you fetch 1,000 milliliters of water or 1 liter of water, how much salt in it? That is what we call, but people call it part per 1,000, and this is the symbol. Why do they call it part per 1,000? Because 1 liter is 1,000 mil, so part of the 1,000 mil is salt. So how much of the one mil, 1 liter is salt, and that's what they call part per 1,000. So the salt content varies from one water body or one type of water to the other. Salinity, like salt water from the sea, has salinity of 35 parts per 1,000. Fresh water is less than 0.5 parts per 1,000. Brackish or estuary water is higher than 0.5 parts per 1,000. So the organisms in these estuaries who love salt and they also love fresh water, we call them uri-haline organisms. Uri-haline organisms. They will survive when there's minimal fresh water, and they also survive when there's plenty of fresh water. So they don't care about the variation. If at night seawater rises, seawater will flow to the estuary and the water will become more alkaline, more saline, they will survive. During daytime, seawater will retreat, fresh water will move to the estuary, they will be able to adjust to the changing content of salt. But freshwater organisms will always stay in solution that is less than 0.5 salinity. And that is it. There are methods for measuring salt content. And these methods, I have listed about 5 here. We have the Moe-Kuhnsen silver nitrate titration. We have hydrometer. We have refractometer or salinometer. We have saline conductivity temperature meters. All these are devices. I believe in many communities or in many institutions, hydrometer and salinometer are the most common that are used. The refractometer measures or is designed to test concentration of salt, and it uses what we call refractive index. It determines the refractive index that if you shine light through it, or if you put the salt water in the device or water in the device and you shine light through it, at what angle will the salt crystals cause light to be refracted, and that will be determined. Will be used. The machine is trained to give us values about the salinity. Salinometer uses electrical conductivity, how much current is generated from this salt solution. So they will put electrodes there, they will connect it to voltmeter and how do you call it? The millimeter. They will connect this and they will see how much current will flow through or be conducted from this device. Now the next factor that we are talking about is dissolved gas. Dissolved gas, we have it in the aquatic environment, we have it on the terrestrial environment. How much gas is in the air? How much gas is in the water? So the gases include oxygen, carbon dioxide, and hydrogen sulfide. Basically, hydrogen sulfide contributes to the bad odor of water bodies, because hydrogen sulfide smells like rotten egg. So hydrogen sulfide contributes to the bad odor of water bodies. So there are factors that also influence the amount of dissolved oxygen in water body. Temperature is one. Salinity is one. Wind, I told you, wind can cause a stir, and biological activities like photosynthesis will increase oxygen content in the water body or on land. But if there is zooplankton activity as biological activity, then the zooplanktons will deplete the water medium of oxygen, increasing the quantity of dissolved carbon dioxide in the water. Respiration is also taking away oxygen and increasing carbon dioxide. Decomposition is also taking away oxygen and increasing carbon dioxide. So some of these processes, if organisms die and they are left in water, then and the organisms are not removed and their body begins to decompose in water, then all the oxygen in the water will be used by the decomposing organisms, and fishes and other organisms cannot survive in the water. When carbon dioxide is dissolved in water, carbon dioxide can react with water, displacing hydrogen ion. And if hydrogen ion is released a lot into the water, then you use hydrogen plus to stand for acidity. So the water becomes acidic eventually. However, carbon dioxide may also be turned into bicarbonate or carbonate. All these also, at some point when you have these accumulating in water, then the water becomes alkaline. But the good news is that these bicarbonates and the carbonates can react with calcium and sodium to form calcium carbonate or calcium bicarbonate. And these components or these molecules or compounds are incorporated into the shell of crabs, lobsters, snails, and stuff to help them build strong shells. Fishes it may also accumulate in fishes for them to build strong bones. So at any point, dissolution, there should be a balance in the dissolution of carbon dioxide in the water, and also because in the water, the plants also need the carbon dioxide for photosynthesis, and eventually they will produce oxygen. So that is how important carbon dioxide is. We shouldn't think that carbon dioxide is such a bad gas that it doesn't have to be part of our environment. No, we don't only need oxygen. If plants don't use carbon dioxide, they can't produce oxygen. That is the truth. Please, do we understand up to this point? Is there any question? Okay, thank you. All right, so we continue. So the device for measuring, or the means of measuring dissolved oxygen, is Winkler's titration, or dissolved oxygen probes are used to measure oxygen. Common factors that affect plants and animals. We continue with currents. You know, current is basically a movement of molecules. If it is in water, movement of water molecules from one point to the other. And current is actually influenced by wind, the amount of wind that is flowing. Current is important in water because the current may determine which organisms can be found in the water. Some organisms, the current blows and the water carries them away. Some organisms too, they are able to swim against the current, and they'll be in the open water. And some organisms, because they know they'll be carried away by current, if there are rocks at the bottom of the river, they want to hide under or in between the rocks so that the current does not take them to a destination that they don't want. Because when they hide in between the rocks and the current is carrying food particles, they will filter the food particles and they'll get some to eat. And even if they are hiding there, if a prey also wants to hide there, the big ones will get a chance to feed on the prey. So current is really important. So they say that this is important in the aquatic habitat, and the factor that causes current in the oceans are wind. I mentioned wind, tidal movement, temperature, density difference of mass of water. The device for measuring current is called current meter. Tides and wave. We need to understand that there's a difference between tide and wave. Okay, there's a difference between tide and wave. Tide is slow to build. Tide is slow to build. Tide is not something that happens rapidly. And tide is basically based on the volume of or the expanse of water. So when we come to the beach, they say we have low tide and high tide. At low tide, even when the wave comes, it doesn't go far at the beach. But at high tide, the volume of water is increased, so water can move all the way far at the beach. Yeah. So tide actually occurs due to the gravitational pull between Earth, the sun, and the moon. And the more the moon appears, then the pull, the gravitational pull increases, and more water is pulled towards a particular direction. And when the sun shines, then the moon is moved further away from a particular location, and the tide goes down. But we need to understand that if the sun shines in Ghana, there's darkness somewhere else. So a gravitational pull becomes stronger, and by the time we wake up, the volume of water that came to the shore is high. And there are some people that the gravitational pull may be so high that by the time they are asleep, seawater, especially those that live at the coast, seawater comes to their home. People at Qatar and the surrounding coastal towns have always been complaining about seawater coming to wash away their houses, even when they are asleep. At night, seawater comes to their home, yeah, because of the gravitational pull. There are different.
Doc, please, we can't hear you. Or is it my end?
Yeah, we can hear him.
Charlie, I made a mistake. I go mute the lecturer.
Yeah, I'll mute him.
Pray.
Now, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Sure. You are back.
Audible.
Nana, you buy Calipo for me.
Thank you. I'll give you Don Simon. Calipo is small. Say sorry.
Okay. But what I was saying is that we have looked at the factors that affect both terrestrial and aquatic environment, and we zoomed in to look at how certain factors also affect aquatic environment only, how the environment, the organisms in the environment are influenced by these environmental factors. Let's look at.
Look.
Yes.
Hello, Doc. Yeah,
I'm here,
can you go over that? Can you go over that site again, since your network or hiccup somewhere? Because
Okay.
I didn't get it very well.
Okay, no problem. So there's a difference between tide and waves. Waves are currents. Okay, like waves describe the energy of flow of water. So basically, we can have waves on the surface of a fresh water, or like a lake or a pond or a river. But we also have waves in the sea. But tide actually happens on the sea. It happens in the place where we have large expanse of water. And it happens because force of gravity exists between the sun, the moon, and Earth. So basically, during the night when the moon becomes visible, the gravitational pull between the moon and the earth is so high. During the daytime, because the sun comes in between the earth and the moon, the earth is not meeting, or a particular portion where the sun comes between the earth and the moon, the earth is not making a direct contact with the moon. So the gravitational pull is high. So whenever gravitational pull is high, you see that the volume of water begin to increase, and we say that we have high tide. But when the sun comes in between, then the energy goes down and the water volume goes down, and we say we have low tide. By the time we are having low tide, there's darkness in a particular part of the world, so the gravitational pull between the moon and the earth also increase, and it draws more water towards it. So that is it. So in Ghana, we can have, like they say, every 4 hours there's a high tide and there's a low tide. But at night, the tide is always high, but during the daytime. So based on the shape of the moon, the tide has different names. When we have full moon or a new full moon, then we call the tide spring tide. But we have the new tide when we have some half moon or three-quarters moon. And then we have semi-diurnal tide, and we have diurnal tide. All these are associated with the shape of the moon and the effect of the force of gravity on the water body. Please, I guess this is clear. Okay. Now let's go to the factors on land only. Factors on land only. Factors on land. Terrestrial environment. Humidity is important. Edaphic factors. We are talking about factors within the soil. Then topography, we are talking about the nature of the soil, whether it is slopy, whether it's mountainous, whether it is rocky, whether it's gravels, whether it's red soil, clay soil. That's kind of topography, how whether it is flat or undulating. So the nature of the land based on the presence of these conditions or these materials on land. And also we have a minute, please.
Yes, Doc.
Okay, so back to the factors. Humidity. So when we talk about humidity, everybody knows we are talking about how much water droplets, water molecules are present in the air. How much? So we say that the water content of air. But you know, actually, we can hardly know the content of water in air. So usually we look at the relative, rather like comparatively, how much. So we talk about relative humidity that is measured, but the exact amount of water in air we can't tell, because when the sun shines, more water rises, but more or less they go very high. But when the night falls, now water droplets come together and they are more or less falling. By the time we wake up in the morning, leaves and other places, roofing sheets are wet, which indicate that water droplets fall. So humidity is variable at any point in time. So if you really want to measure the relative humidity, then we may have to check differently. So these are formulas for measuring relative humidity. But sometimes we also can measure it in terms of ratio or percentage. So if you want to add relative humidity in terms of percentage, then instead of multiplying just by 100, you change it, actual vapor pressure over saturation pressure times 100%. But let's look at what we need to look for. So let's assume this is the water body, okay, the water is here if you follow the curve. And when the sun shines, water is evaporated. And then when the water is evaporated, at some point, too much water molecules are in the atmosphere. So the water now condenses and the water begins to fall back. And it gets to a point that you realize that the amount of water that is leaving the water body is almost the same as the amount of water that is coming back into the water body. So we say that the air is rather saturated with water vapor. And when saturation occurs, then an equilibrium is established because water leaving is the same as water condensing. But even that, when the saturation occurs, not so much water can leave because the space over the surface of the water is already occupied by several molecules. But over time, as the sun intensity increases, before it reaches, condensation begins to form and coming back. Evaporation increases with increasing sun's energy, increasing temperature, and before condensation occurs. Now, the water content in the air is really important in determining how one feels and even which organisms will stay here. The water content determines which organisms will stay there. Okay, thank you, my dear. So as I said at first, if you live in northern Ghana, I'm just using northern Ghana as an example because I've been there before. I've been to Bolga, I've been to Tamale, I've been to Salaga, I've been to Kwengi. So I can tell my experience. When you are in this environment and the sun shines, the air is dry. So even if you sweat, the sweat will dry before you even realize that you are sweating. So basically, there's kind of no water on your body because the sweat that is coming is quickly dried up. The skin becomes very dry, very wrinkled, wrinkled if you are from the south and you go there at first. So that is the experience. But when you come to the south, because the seawater is evaporating and that the air in the south is saturated with water, you will sweat, but the sweat on your body will not evaporate. And that your skin becomes sticky because even the salt water in the atmosphere may mix with the sweat. The skin becomes sticky and it is so uncomfortable. It's so uncomfortable for those of us at the coast. Some of us, maybe I'll talk about myself, but it's the general feeling. But then at the north too, the skin becomes very dry and it could also be uncomfortable. But the people have also become adapted to it and they'll have to dwell in it. So if some organisms love the dry environment, then they will survive there. If those that love the humid environment, they will survive there. So this condition determines one's preference of choosing a habitat, and this influences distribution of organisms in a habitat. Relative humidity is measured by the device called hygrometer. Edaphic factors, we are talking about the ecology of the soil, ecological factors of the soil. When you get soil, what do you find in it? When it rains, water goes into the soil. So the soil contains moisture or water. Soil contains particles of gravels, and air is the organic matter because materials decay and they go into the soil. Minerals are also in the organic matter. The particle size are also important. So if you go to the sandy soil, the particles of sand are big. Therefore, organisms that you want to burrow into the soil fast for protection, they will be there. But sandy soil, because particles are big, when you pour water on the sand, water drains fast, and when the sun shines, the sand dries. The sand dries fast. So that is a disadvantage. But it allows water to flow in between. When you take clay soil, Clean soil retains water because the particles are small. So if you pour water on it, the water doesn't sink. The water stays on top. So in this case, crabs that love the clay, they will go to the clay to a place to dig their hole. But the crabs that love the sand, they will be at the beach, running through the sand, digging their hole easily into the sand. The hole, when the tide comes, it covers the hole, but they will dig again and come up. Topography talks about the nature of the land, whether the land is slopy or mountainous. So it talks about elevations and depressions of the land. That is it. And some organisms would want to live in the valley, whilst organisms who want to be on the mountaintop. So you don't rear sheep on the mountaintop. You rear sheep in the valley so that they can get green vegetation and they eat. But birds will want to stay on the mountaintop. So if I have an eagle, the eagle will make nest in a mountain and not on the clean ground for people to come and harm them. So they also depend on their survivability. It depends on the distribution. It facilitates or influences distribution of plants and animals in this environment. Now the next one is depth and profile. Depth and profile. So depth and profile, we want to know how deep the soil is. If we are looking for oil and they are prospecting, if they are looking for gold and they are prospecting, if they want to dig borehole in your environment, on your house, they have to check how deep is the water, how deep should they dig before they will get the water. So it all depends on what the individual is looking for in the ground, in the soil, and whether the individual will be able to survive there or they will have to live out of the place. So all this depth and profile of the needs of organisms also influence their survivability. So they use the device called sonar to detect if something is hidden in the groundwater or gold or oil as well. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the first lecture of it. Today is our first meeting. My head is aching. I'm not feeling quite well. So I would like us to end today's meeting here. Maybe next week we can do. But if somebody has a question, I'm there to answer.
No, please, lecture slide being shared.
Lecture slide. Yes, I should check. One of you contacted me and I shared, but maybe another person can contact me as well. You know, you have the timetable. My number is on it. Okay. But do you have? I think there's a.
If you can
right?
get the whole slide so that some of us make hard copy of it. The whole slide, so that those of us who make hard copy can print it.
I'm in the process of preparing. Okay. To say the information is consistent.
But,
so you ask.
Can we have the letter you have prepared for now?
Yes. Oh, I can share. What is the name of your WhatsApp group? The WhatsApp group that you belong to. What's the name?
Hello, dog.
Yes,
please. Some of us are having it already, so we can repost it on our platforms.
Okay, please. If you have it, repost it so that everybody will benefit from.
Okay, thank you very much.
Make sure you post it to the general group so that we can all have it. Those who are not in your center.
You are the third cohort. You are the third cohort, right?
All right. Yes.
Yes, please.
Okay. I've heard it. So today we will do this. We will do 2 hours today. Yes, please.
You said you are in the process of preparing it. So how come we are having it?
No. I mean, I prepared this already. You understand? That's why I can share it. So I shared. But subsequent meetings, you understand? You
I
question.
think Kafi said it on the platform. Macy said it on the platform.
No, she deleted it because she said no one appreciated her. So please repost it. Don't mind that.
Okay, Sister Charity, you will share it for me. Okay.
Okay, sir.
All right. So thank you very much. We will continue next week. Bye bye.
Speedy recovery, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello.
Yeah, hello, good evening.
Hello?
Yeah, I wanted to ask a dog question, but he has gone. But the question is out of this for the first semester. I'll ask him next week. Don't worry.
Please, is this course for both chemistry and biology students? Or biology alone? I didn't join fast. Can you hear me?
Tambourine. Anyway,
Hey,
please, have you closed?
Hey, firstly.
Have you closed?
Yeah, we just close. Huh?
Hey.
Yeah, we close.
Let there be any more.
Yeah, we are closed next week. We don't have anything again.
Person me with a winner for both chemistry and biology for and biology for uncle.
This one is meant for I think it's for only biology. Because as we are having the chemistry, people are also having their own, which is the stereochemistry.
No, then it didn't come.
Well, we are doing that. Tell you, I'm going to do. We are just,
First
now, physical, no problem. You have to go to it. Physical, no problem. You have to go to it. Now, that's the serious thing.
Now, your issue can close.
Recording the
Tambourine.
Gideon.
Tambourine.
Gideon.
Tambourine.
Yes, sir, Gideon.
Hello, Tambourine. Are you saying that the chemistry they are having their lectures too?
Yes, they were having their lectures, but I didn't come on.
They were to have, but they don't come on. Oh, right here, that. Yeah.
Hey. Hello, Singapore. Never say, in be somewhere actually. One more question. Yeah.
Hello. Okay. Is the class over?
We have closed. We have closed. Hello, madam. We have closed. Madam Yapon.